Greetings and welcome to the CODEC Show, episode number 3. My name is Peter James, and I am the professor of business and entrepreneurship here on campus at the College of DuPage, located in beautiful Glen Ellen, a suburb of Chicago. For you first-timers here, welcome. The College of DuPage is a leading community college here in the United States of America, and actually, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary. Actually, let's give it up for our 50th anniversary here for the College of DuPage. So exciting, as you can tell from our studio audience, of course. We have a host of activities going on relative to that 50th anniversary. So please, if you get a chance, folks in the studio audience, as well as on YouTube World, please visit CODEC.edu for more information on our activities celebrating our anniversary. Before we begin our show today, I have to admit I am dressed like this for a reason. I'm usually a little bit more dressed up for the occasion, but I did have to do a presentation right before this on nonverbal communication. And it was funny because some of the looks I was getting from some of my students was crazy. But I just want to explain why but I also wanted to kind of match my guest's uniform here as well. So I'd also like to give a quick, before we jump into the presentation and into the interview, I would like to give a great shout out to our accounting department here on campus. The program also includes the distinguished professors of Maureen Macbeth, who is the coordinator of the program, Rukshad Patel, Chris Farrow, Joe Moran, and Dan Vital. I just want to actually, for those of you who have not taken any accounting classes here, some great professors as well as some great material as well. So here at CODEC, of course, as most of you know, our goal is to expose students and our audience of entrepreneurs in the field who are actually in the fight, like I like to call it. And by them being in the fight, they're able to share the upsides and the downsides of being an entrepreneur. And I'm hoping we can get a quick picture of that today. Today we have Mr. Justin Hunter. He is the owner of Pure Health and Wellness, which is a family chiropractic service located in Naperville, Illinois. And I won't even preclude any more of the interview, but let's give a warm welcome for Justin Hunter.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Truly appreciate it. So this is kind of a treat for us because we usually don't have anybody in the healthcare industry here. Usually when folks think of entrepreneurs, they don't think of someone in the healthcare industry. So first, tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe where you're from a little bit, and how long you've been in the area, and all that good stuff as well, if you don't mind.
No problem. Obviously, my name is Justin Hunter. I'm a chiropractor. I was born and raised in Naperville. My dad was a Naperville fireman for 30 years, so I kind of grew up here in the area. COD was much smaller when I was younger, but it's a great junior college in the area. I've been in practice for 14 years. I started my practice out in Woodridge, Illinois at Seven Bridges. And then I had an opportunity at one point to actually come back to Naperville and have my practice there, which has been a really special treat. And that's been a fantastic thing.
Good stuff, good stuff. So that's, actually, thank you for that background a little bit. I'm always curious, even before you started your practice, tell us about how you got started. What made you go into that field as a chiropractor, and what was your progression like, even as you started college, maybe even as a freshman, even in high school for that matter? What made you think? What direction did you go in?
All right, so So if you know the area, well, the area back then, in the 70s, late 70s, was just farmland. Yeah. So I lived in Naperville. It would be 95th and Book Road, which would be just middle of nowhere, and when I was 6 years old and my brother was 9, we decided to say we wanted stuff. We didn't have anything. My dad's like, we don't have any money. Right. So I wanted stuff. And my dad goes, go get a job. Right. At 6, who's going to get a job, right? So so we came up with the idea, let's go collect cans, aluminum cans. Okay. So we go up and down the street, up inside the roads, collecting cans, sticking in the garbage bag, and carrying our big trash bags with us all up and down Book Road. And in the meantime, we'd also find there was a Springbrook golf course, and we would find golf balls. So we'd pick up the golf balls too. So there's 2 reasons. So after that, it took about a month to fill up several garbage bags. Right. And back then, aluminum was expensive. Right. Okay. So we got probably about $40 worth of aluminum back then. And that was a lot of money for us. So, and we kept on doing it all summer. Unfortunately, at the end of the summer, aluminum prices dropped, and then it was like $3 or $4 for as much as aluminum we had before. So we said, well, that business is done.
The return on investment was horrible.
No, it was awful. But the golf ball thing was kind of neat. Was a Springbrook golf course, a driving range. All these guys would hit golf balls, And so we'd pick up the golf balls and return the golf balls to the clubhouse.
Sure, sure.
And then end result would be, well, we got free hot dogs, we got free pop, we got free, and we got more free stuff. So we said, this is kind of cool. So, so that's
better than money.
Yes, it's better than money. But at the same time, it was like, this is what started me thinking, well, what else could I do?
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, at age 12 or 11, I'm like, I want money. I want stuff. So I ended up, I want to go mow lawns. I'm going to do yard work.
Right.
So I knocked on doors, and I ended up with 4 lawns. And at the end of that summer, I had 5 lawns a week.
Right.
At $12 a lawn, I had more money in my pocket than I do now in cash. Which, so I did that till I was 15. But then, as you get older, you get a part-time job. I worked at Dairy Queen. I worked at Ace Hardware.
Right.
And that was mundane. I mean, working at Dairy Queen and Ace Hardware, it's just mundane. And I actually had more fun doing yard work.
Sure.
And mowing lawns. So then that progressed went to college, and I was actually, I was talented in art. Okay. I can draw.
I think we have some artists in the room as well. I won't call them by name, but they're here in the room.
Good. And being an artist, so in high school, I was handy with pots. So I was making pots in high school, and I was making teapots.
Like pots?
Pots, like vases and teapots and plates. And I was selling those.
Sure.
Another side job, because I wanted stuff.
Wow.
And I had a girlfriend, so I had to.
Got to get stuff.
Got to get stuff.
Right.
And so then, when I was headed toward college, I was like, okay, this is something I want to do. I can draw, and so then I went to Bradley University.
Okay, right.
Down south,
Peoria.
Right? Yep. Mm-hmm. And I ended up being a fine arts major.
Wow.
In graphic design.
Wow. Okay, so now I'm really confused now, right?
Yep.
Fine arts major.
Well,
okay.
Let's back it up. I was talented in art, and my art teacher said, you're good at this. Sure. You need to do something with this. My biology teacher at the time and my math teacher says, well, you're not smart enough to really go to college, so you need to be in a tech school or don't bother going to college.
Wow.
Well, that made me angry, and it made me, be more aggressive, I would say, and let's go to college.
Sure.
So I ended up going to college, and it ended up being, I was a fine arts major, and I enjoyed it. I was good at it, and I enjoyed it, but I end up, once again, the teacher kind of twisted my views, and I was like, well, I don't know if I want to do this anymore.
Right.
And then this was going to even throw you for a bigger loop. I went through college, graduated a fine arts degree, and then at the time we were in a recession in 95, I believe.
Right.
We're in not as big as one, a small recession, and no one was getting jobs.
Sure.
So I started interviewing just to practice. I ended up getting a job with Anderson Consulting as a computer programmer.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. As a computer programmer, and did that for a year. Okay.
Fine arts to computer programming.
And now Anderson Consulting's philosophy was back then was if you have a 3.5 grade point average in college, you can learn anything, which is relatively true.
Everybody hear that?
And that was their philosophy. So they didn't care what major you were,
right?
But as long as they felt you were intelligent enough to learn this, they will teach you the computer programming part.
Got it.
So, and the reason why they have they said 3.5, I asked one of the partners at the time when I did my final interview, I go, why me? I'm the only fine arts major that I know you guys have.
Right.
And they go, just like I said, you have a 3.5 or higher. Therefore, you are smarter than the average person. Therefore, we know that you take the same classes your freshman and sophomore year than the kids who scored 36 ACTs. You take the same classes. You got better scores than they did.
Okay.
Now, I want to tell you this, and I don't mind telling you guys this either. I'm a poor test taker. Absolutely poor. I had a 19 on my ACT. And the average is a 21.
So you had a 19 on your ACT. So let's even back up. Let's go back even further. So you got a 19 on your ACT.
Yes.
You go to college as a fine arts major. You
Yes.
graduate as a fine arts, bachelor's in fine arts.
Bachelor of Science. That's even more bizarre. Bachelor of Science in graphic design.
In graphic design. And then you go to work for Anderson Consulting, at the time, a very large consulting firm.
Yes.
Okay, so you're there now. You're there a year.
A year, yes.
Okay.
And I realized this is not for me.
Okay.
I do not like to play in other people's sandboxes.
Okay.
If you guys know that analogy, it's just, I realized at that time that I needed to do something different. Anderson Consulting, you work your butt off. And for 60 hours, 70 hours a week, I wanted to do something that I wanted to do for myself.
A lot of traveling in Anderson Consulting as well.
I didn't have to travel much.
Oh, you did not have to?
No.
Okay.
I was fortunate in that.
Good.
But still, they work you hard. And I realized at that point, if I'm going to work this hard,
sure,
I'm going to do it for myself.
Okay, I like that.
And so then I quit Anderson, and I went back to school, got my sciences that I didn't have with my labs, and then I pursued to become a doctor like I should have done in the first place that I wanted to do when my biology teacher told me that I wasn't smart enough.
Wow, interesting. So okay, so now you're back in school, and you're working to be a doctor, but still you're still on the path to be an MD, more or less.
Right.
So where did the chiropractic path come into picture?
The chiropractic path started when you go to I was starting having back pain.
Okay. Yeah.
All right. And I was in the gym a lot, and the doctor said, here's your prescription.
Sure.
Well, I was studying for the MCATs.
Right.
I was in organic chemistry. I was in organic chemistry and in chemistry class playing hydrochloric acid. You really can't be on hydrocodone. You can't be on painkillers when you're playing with that stuff.
Right.
So what happened was I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Well, then do physical therapy. I hurt myself in the gym. It wasn't like I was doing, it's just overuse and my back hurts.
Sure.
What can you do for me? Well, here's physical. I don't want to do physical therapy because it's not a muscle weakness problem.
Right.
All right. Well, then there's surgery. And I'm like, well, this is not a surgery thing I can get. So after a month of this, of pain, my mom said to me, why don't you go to a chiropractor? Mm-hmm. And I honestly said they're a bunch of quacks.
Has anybody heard that before about chiropractors being? Yeah, I mean, most of us have heard that from one realm or another. I've heard it over time as well.
They're a bunch of quacks.
Okay, so your response was?
When my mom,
after you told her, but her response was, excuse me, yeah.
No, she told me to go, and I said a bunch of quacks. She goes, just go.
Just go. Okay, so.
And so I went kicking and screaming. Sure. I went. Within 2 to 3 weeks, I was fine.
Wow.
So then he convinced me to be a chiropractor.
Wow.
And that's how I became a chiropractor.
Wow, good for you. So you went down that path,
yep.
And finished up, and actually, so you finished up. Did you go right into private practice? Did you join a group? Oh, you did.
I did. Once again, I don't like to play in other people's sandboxes. So I had the opportunity to start my own practice. If I look back on it, I probably shouldn't have done that because it took me twice as long to get to where I'm at today. I should have worked for someone for a year to 2 years just to gain some experience, maybe bought into his practice, maybe bought his practice. Maybe find an old guy who's willing to retire, and you just take his practice over. But I was a stubborn guy like I normally am, and I ended up being, and saying to myself, I can do this.
Yeah.
I persevered before, I'll persevere again, and I'll just do it.
So I'm glad you kind of brought that up a little bit. As much as I teach entrepreneurship classes, I always say that there's no real experience about being an entrepreneur unless you're actually in it, learning the bad sides about it, the downsides about it, the struggles more or less, and then learning what you can, and then learning from those mistakes and becoming better as a result. You've even demonstrated that you learned and realized, wow, if I had to do it all over again, I would go work for somebody else as opposed to jumping on board. So that's some very, very good insight. Actually, I want to open up the floor a little bit for some questions. I got a few more as well relative to his path. I think we have a question over here. So, yes, sir.
Yeah, you said you had took a very long time to get to where you're at now. You wish you didn't start it right away by yourself. Did you ever have to stop your business, to think it through and kind of, rethink how you first thought about it?
In my industry, you can't stop. Because back then you have a lease to your building, and that's got to get paid. So if I stop, that means I owe more money. So stopping wasn't. Let's put it this way: failure was not an option. It really wasn't. And to this day, failure isn't an option. And it's one of those things that I always tell myself: no matter how bad it gets, failure is not an option.
Do you ever get close?
I've come several times close. Yeah. Close. I mean, there is. The 4-year, this is kind of interesting, 4-year mark, I had to take a loan out for the business. And I ended up, the hardest part back then was, I have the money for the business to keep it running, but what am I going to eat? I didn't have any money to eat, so it's just kind of like, where do you get that money? So you work part-time jobs to feed yourself. Around the 4-year mark, it was kind of like, well, this is the make it or break it. I'm not really making that much money at this. is it time for me to shut my door? And I go, I only have about 2 more months of funds left.
Wow.
That's it. And then otherwise, I got to close up.
Yeah.
And thank goodness, I had the best month of my career the next month, and it just took off from there. It was really random. I don't know if it was other people were involved. It just all of a sudden, my practice doubled within a month.
Yeah.
Now, was it because of all the hard work I did before? I have no idea. Yeah, that's hard to say.
And for those of you listening in the studio audience as well as on camera there, this entrepreneurial journey is not an overnight success ever, usually. Actually, it's never an overnight success. The media sometimes portrays it like it's going to happen instantaneous, but any of those entrepreneurs who are successful that you see about online or see on TV, it's never been, hey, one day I'm broke, the next day I'm a millionaire, ever. So that's the thing, that's a preconceived notion. We have another question over here on the left-hand side.
I was just wondering if you did anything specific to gain more clients or customers or patients.
I have honestly, I've tried almost everything that I can think of to gain a patient or a client. We've done health fairs, we've done TV ads, we've done newspaper. At one point, I actually almost thought about Jefferson dressing up in a skeleton and dancing on the street.
You guys have seen those guys, right?
I've tried everything, but what we've learned, the best thing that anyone can do who owns their own business is you shake hands and you introduce yourself and tell them what you do. That is hands down the best revenue source to bring in people. The more faces you meet, the more people you meet, the more meetings you go to, the more events you go to, the more people that see you, the more people will come into your office, regardless of chiropractic, dentistry. It doesn't really matter. Sales for, if you look at salesmen out there, that's all they're doing, dinners. There's a book out there called Never Eat Alone. And if you're serious about entrepreneurship, that's a good book to read because it talks about when you go out to lunch, when you're on a business trip, whatever, don't eat alone. Try to have someone with you because that could be a potential client, regardless of who it is. You don't know who they're going to know. You don't know who they're going to have in their pocket of like, oh, I know this guy who could use your services. I know a guy who could infuse your business with cash. You just don't know. So the best thing I can do to tell you is just get out and meet people. I know it's simple, but it's, for me, it's actually a lot harder.
Yeah.
Now, does Myers-Briggs? Do you guys teach, about Myers-Briggs? You're an E or an I or an N or a J.
So for those of you who don't know, Myers-Briggs is a personality test, which kind of gives insight into who you are. It's actually really, really good, and maybe we'll even cue a little bit of something about that on the video also.
So when I've taken the test several times, and every time I take it, I'm an E barely or an I barely. So I float in between. So I can be an extrovert, but I'm a huge introvert too. So what happens with me is that when I go to these events, I'm spent. And it takes me that much time to recharge because I'm a big introvert.
Yeah.
So, but then there's some salespeople out there that are solid introverts, and that's great for them. So that's another challenge. You know your personality type, because then you can gauge yourself as you go out and try to do business. You can actually decide to yourself, okay, I know my limitations. What else can I do?
And one of the big things, really know yourself, understand who you are relative to what business you're getting into. We have another question, but I do want to ask one question before we even get over here really quick. So you started out early on, and it was a struggle. Did you have a target market you were focusing on, a certain segment of society that you said, hey, these are the people who are going to want to come support me because they need my services? Or were you thinking that everybody's my potential customer? What were you thinking at that time? And have you learned over time, maybe?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's when you first start out, you're like, I want a body. You just want a warm body in that room because, you have bills.
Absolutely.
You have a family, you got bills, you got to pay stuff. And now as I get older and more seasoned, I'm able to say, okay, where do I really want to focus on my business? Athletes are great clients.
Sure.
Obviously, a chiropractor or a musculoskeletal doctor, so they're great clients. But what I learned about athletes is they want to get truly better.
Yeah.
And they want to be playing like tomorrow.
Fast as they can.
As fast as they can. Sure. So they'll do anything you tell them, which is awesome. But at first it was pretty much, I see, and to this day I see infants. I've been adjusting my daughter since birth.
Wow.
I see babies. I see kids. I see teenagers. moms, dads, parents. Unfortunately, I don't see many elderly.
Yeah.
It's just that's not where
That's not your niche.
it's not my niche.
Yeah, okay. We have a question over here.
Just a quick question. Your prior art and computer skills, do they still benefit you today as a chiropractor?
That's
Yes.
a good question.
They do. I don't use them as much. I was talking to a gentleman who is linking up this group to my Facebook.
Sure.
And I feel like, this is going to date myself, I feel like the VHS, player.
You're right.
You guys probably maybe know that or don't, but there used to be a clock on it that would blink all the time at your parents' house or grandparents' house.
Yeah.
I would always have to set that. But I kind of feel like that is, like technology, to answer your question really quick, is the technology, yes, we have to use it. But as I get older, I'm understanding less and less and less because it changes so fast.
Yeah.
So I have to now hire people to do that. Now, do I remember how to program in C++? Some. But I don't have time to do it. I don't have the energy. I'm seeing 15 people a day. Then I have to play all these other hats, and IT is not my thing anymore. And it changes so fast, so you have to make the decision, what hat can you wear, and there's only so many hours in a day. What can you give out? Now, when I first started, I wore every hat imaginable.
Yeah.
I did marketing, yes. I even did my own layouts. I did my own designs. At one point, I tried my own website. That was a complete failure, and that was awful. But so yes, do I use my art and science and my art and computer background? Absolutely. Has it made me an advantage? I think so. But at the same time, now as I get older, I have a marketing person who does all that stuff. And I have to focus on becoming a doctor and being a doctor rather than wasting time and effort on an IT or the graphics part.
I understand what chiropractic services are. Some of our audience might not quite know the detail of it. So can you give us like a 30-second, just quick overview of how you provide benefits to the human body?
Sure. Chiropractic is basically based on the alignment of the body. So our theory is if we can align your body straight, it doesn't matter if your elbow, knee, or whatever, but it's mostly your spine. If we can align it straight, every nerve that comes out of your spine goes through a different part of the body. Therefore, if they all talk to each other correctly, you have less disease, less injury, you're healthier, live longer. So that's basically the theory.
Sure.
So what I take it one step further, and I'm a huge biomechanics guy, meaning you are, to me, when I look at someone, when I take care of them, it's pulleys, levers, that kind of sort of thing. So if your pulley breaks, that means other things break, and it's a chain reaction. Just kind of like in your car, engine light comes on, you should go get your car fixed. End result is, that's how I look at you. Okay. So we're neuromusculoskeletal doctors.
Okay, interesting. Any more questions from the studio audience? Yes, sir.
Yeah, real quick. Back when you were explaining your backstory, it sort of seemed that after you went to college you decided that you wanted to become a chiropractor, you didn't really go over any of what you had to do. Was there just a school for chiropractic that you had to go to?
That's a good question. So since I had a fine arts degree, okay, I have a Bachelor of Science, so I was kind of different that way. All my art projects kind of like revolved around science and space and stuff. So what happened was I didn't have to take that many classes, so I had to go back to school, and I had to take chemistry lab, or I had to take organic chemistry and lab, I had to take physics, and I had to take biology with lab. So I had to do that first, even before I went back to college, and I went to chiropractic school, okay? Now, there are chiropractic schools out there. They're not in med schools, okay? So we have our own kind of chiropractic schools, just like some dentistry is the same way. Optometry is somewhat the same way. They're not within the school, they're kind of a subset, or they're standalone. All right, and that program is a 3.5-year program. Now, we don't have residencies. That I have a feeling in the future that will change.
Right.
Because the population is demanding more holistic or different forms of medicine rather than the traditional cut and drug. Okay, so after 3.5 years, you have the choice of having the opportunities to maybe go work for someone. Then you have an opportunity to maybe start your own practice, but then you have to decide what you want to do. And that's, hopefully I answered your question with that.
The industry has become really more accepted over the years. I remember back in the 80s and 90s, I'm dating myself now, whereas it was almost frowned upon, maybe because of the elevation of the medical, the normal medical industry, more or less. But now holistic medicine and chiropractic is really gaining ground and becoming more accepted in society overall. Would you see that as well?
Yeah, it's a slow process. I mean, obviously there's obstacles in that.
Sure.
There's some, you know, and in every, I know we get labeled as a different kind of physician.
Right.
But what's kind of, in any profession, you're going to have good people in the profession and bad. Let's look at chiropractors. There's bad chiropractors and there's good chiropractors. There's bad dentists, good dentists. There's bad MDs, good MDs. It doesn't matter what profession it is.
I've had some bad dentists before too.
Yeah, I think, and you're going to run into them regardless, no matter where you go. And you have to seek out the good ones.
Right.
And I know several great chiropractors. It's just that's one of those things that hopefully it changes even further.
Absolutely. So a couple more questions I have. Who's in your circle right now? I mean, I always say that it's important that an entrepreneur has an important circle of maybe 3 or 4 friends or close advisors, people they can rely on to give them good advice as they move forward, or even maybe to add services to their business, whereas they wouldn't have thought of that before. Who's that around you? Who do you rely on?
Okay, well, let's go throughout my career. I've always tried to, people will enter your life. Yeah. And you don't realize they're mentors or advisors for you.
Right.
When I was in school at Bradley, I was a hall director, which is really kind of bizarre as an undergrad. There's usually masters. People are doing hall directors. There was my boss there. His name was Tim Wendell. He passed away, and he was instrumental of me becoming actually a physician. Wow. He actually said, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, he goes, it doesn't matter what you do. Do what you love, the money will follow. Yeah. And it's been true. And you do what you truly love and the money will follow. Yeah. He was instrumental. There was a guy named George Armstrong, he was my speech teacher. Public speaking was a nightmare for me. Very sweet man. There was a gentleman by Dino Delicata. He was an ENT out of Downers Grove, kind of gave me just bedside manner. Yeah. My old dentist, he retired. He's instrumental. Right. Today, I have my wife. Right. I have my family. Yeah. I have this gentleman who is, as a business owner, when something goes wrong, it goes to me. When something goes right, it goes to me. Right. So I have to have someone that I can actually go to ask. There's a guy named Rick Lochner who, he's kind of my life coach, but business coach at the same time. Yeah. So he keeps me on task. Yeah. Because otherwise I'd kind of float off, here and there, and not. He right now keeps me focused. Sure. And his job is, I hired him to get me focused, and he's kind of become a mentor over I've been with him for about 2 years, and it's been a good thing. It's gotten my business to where I was able to buy a building downtown Naperville. Yeah. It's a little house, but it's still a building that I could say is mine rather than renting out.
I think I've heard of Rick. I think he's really good at what he does too.
He does.
Yeah. So my last question for you here is this actually a good one, is really relevant to our audience and our studio, both, and those watching as well. If you were at college age right now, you've kind of revisited some of your upbringing as well as your educational background. But if you had to start over right now and you were in the shoes of a lot of these students here that are watching, what do you think you would do different now? What would you do today if you were in their shoes? And not even to say to follow the way you've gotten to right now, but what would you do with some of the opportunities that they have in front of them?
What do I do different?
It's a loaded question, right?
It is. Because when you do something different, I tried something and I failed at it.
And this is even knowing what you know now.
Yeah. One of my things that about myself is perseverance. Everything I always did the hard way. Yeah. Always. And I still do it the hard way sometimes. Right. But I've always picked myself back up because of, I always look back at that 19 score on my ACT.
Yeah, it's a motivation for you.
Absolutely it was. And, long story short, I found out that I had some learning, not disabilities, but I'm dyslexic. Sure. And so that played a large role, and I was undiagnosed until I got to med school. So what would I do different? There's not much that I would do different.
Wow.
Well, maybe not be at the location that I was for so long, because I was there for 11 years.
Not take the long road. Right?
Yeah, I mean, but in their shoes, I tried to be a social butterfly in college.
Yeah.
Because more people you know, the more, even be a bigger social butterfly.
Wow.
Learn how to public speak better at an early age.
It'll set them apart probably a little bit, what you're saying.
If you can publicly speak, people will listen.
Yeah.
Okay? I know if you can, one thing I'm very poor at is writing.
Yeah.
Because I write in fragments all day long. Learn how to write better.
Yeah.
Because if you can come off and articulate in writing and speaking and get your point across, you can actually go further quicker, because then it's less of a struggle of trying to explain your point.
Wow. That's awesome. Thank you so much for stopping by.
You're welcome.
Hey folks, before we go, I want to say this was a great session we had with Justin today. I would definitely like to thank him, our distinguished guest, for dropping in on us today. I do have a couple of announcements. I would be remiss if I did not mention that CODEC is selling our breast cancer awareness bracelets, as you can see here, wristbands, excuse me, in honor of Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Please make sure you get one today for $1. Also, I would also be remiss if I did not talk about our pitch contest, which is coming up. What else would I have to talk about?
Do you have any employees right now?
We have another question. And I'm also going to talk about, and I already talked about my dress as well, but we do have another question before we finish. Do we have any employees? Do you have any employees right now, he's asking?
I do.
When did they come? When did you hire them? Like, at what time in your business? Something really interesting.
It depends on where the ebbs and flows of the business goes. Right now I have
When did you hire your first employee? How long does it take?
a couple years.
A couple years?
Yeah. I've had numerous, at one point I think I had 6 employees, now I have 2. It all depends on where your practice goes, ebbs and flows. You have to be rolling with the punches. You know, like Obamacare has thrown a giant wrench into our industry. So the recession threw a giant wrench in our industry. So between those two, you had to roll with the punches. And at that point, when those two things really happened, I had to shrink or you fail. Yeah. So you shrink, and you really don't know when the appropriate time is to hire someone. And that's a hard thing to gauge. It's a really hard thing is, when do you hire one? I'm kind of in that quandary currently. Do I hire one and reduce my income? Or do I do a little more work and burn myself out some more and still have the same income? So it's a hard thing is, do you push further or do you draw back and then try to push again? That's a hard question.
All right, let's give Justin a hand really quick. And thank you.